This is a Rogue Media Network podcast.
Greetings, cartoon connoisseurs, and welcome to the Animation Conversation, where we explore the art form from pencils to pixels. And now, here are your hosts, Rusty Shackleford and F.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Animation Conversation. I am Rusty with...
Hey everybody, it's your old pal F. How's it going, party people?
Alrighty, F. So for today, we've got a discussion about a new IP for Cartoon Network. From what I understand, it is the first superhero for the Cartoon Network stable of cartoons. This will be the first superhero cartoon. Not only the first superhero cartoon, but the first superhero comedy animated series to be produced in Africa.
Yeah,
mostly, yeah.
It's funny. Because there are other productions that are out right now and that are coming out in the future and that have been out in the past that have kind of tried to brag, oh, we're the first African cartoon on this channel or that channel. And then if you do any research on them at all, you discover that it was created by someone from Africa, or the head writer is from Africa, but then absolutely everything else is done in either Europe or elsewhere.
Absolutely.
Which it's whereas this show, it's your new favorite cartoon, Garbage Boy and Trash Can. This was made, apart from me, this was made entirely in Africa, and I was the supervising director for it. It's the first time I've directed a show for Cartoon Network. And apart from me and maybe one or two other main people, the entire thing was done in Africa. The creator is Nigerian. He's Ridwan Mashood. And he created it fully, designed it, wrote the first episode. He's the creator. It's not like he just came up with the idea, pitched it, and Cartoon Network said, oh yeah, we'll run with this. No, yeah. He full on created it, designed it, wrote for it. And in addition to him, the studio where we did the animation is in Africa. My storyboard artist is African and in Africa. This is, for all accounts, from what I can tell, the first fully African cartoon to be sort of nationally distributed this way. And
that's kind of awesome. So let me ask you this: what is the significance of that in the animation community? Because I know it's a really significant thing, and it might seem insignificant to from the general perspective, but from your perspective, what is the significance of something like this being completely created out of Africa?
Well, in addition to the fact that, that's a great question. In addition to the fact that, Africa is a continent that people just always kind of speak of it as if it's one big country.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a million countries on a giant continent that, takes up a third of the globe. It's this huge place with, a really just cornucopia of cultures and people and all this stuff. So the fact that Africa is a continent that hasn't really been tapped for that much in the way of inspiration in the arts for global distribution is kind of surprising. Now, of course, there's Wakanda Forever, but and by the way, I love those movies. They're great, but Wakanda's not a real country in Africa. So whereas the creator of this show is from Nigeria, he's an actual African and a great kid. And so the way this came about was Cartoon Network Europe had some sort of global, we're looking for the next new young creator contest, and Ridwan had this show and he pitched it and he sort of won this contest. And
so kind of like the same thing that you guys did with some of the shows on Cartoon Network and stuff where it was kind of like, hey, we want, 10, 15, 20 creators to come and show us like a short, and then that kind of thing.
Yeah, and the other reason it's significant in a more sort of industry centric terms is when you talk to anybody in the animation industry and they talk about, well, who do we outsource our animation to? Because there's more and more, animation is being done more and more in the US again, which is great, but there's kind of no getting around the fact that animation has become a global industry. It's lots of, and that's what I've been actually doing for the past 15 years of my career, is acting as a consultant for overseas studios doing international like co-productions. So
that's awesome. That's a whole nother episode in itself, I think.
Yeah.
It's I would love to actually hear more about that. That sounds really, really interesting, because it's that in itself is I feel like that's got to be a really unique position to be in the animation industry.
It is. I feel like it's given me a perspective, not just of animation, but of the world in general, that I never would have had before. But as I was going to say, when you think about animation, if you're in the industry, if you think about animation, back in the 90s, the first place you would think about as a support country for the animation industry is Korea. Everything got shipped to Korea. Absolutely everything.
Yeah, absolutely. I've learned a little bit about that during my King of the Hill podcast. I learned quite a bit about that talking with Wes Archer. He kind of told me a little bit. I didn't get a formal interview with him, but an informal conversation. He said that, back in the day it was crates. They would have to send crates and crates, and he said the shipping would just be astronomical.
Oh.
He said just the shipping budget alone was, it was insane to look at, just to know they have this much money allotted just to send boxes of papers to Korea. So
no, it was insane. During the course of my career alone, we went from literally sending just stacks and stacks and stacks of storyboards to everything being sent digitally, and it seemed to happen overnight.
Was there ever like a weird?
Not only would they weigh 3,000 tons, but it would take a month to get there.
Yeah. Was there like an intermediary phase where you were sending like hard drives and like flash drives, or did it just go straight from like paper to like digital?
It went straight from paper to, we're going to email you this stuff. I mean, not email. We're going to put it on some sort of server.
Like a cloud, like a cloud kind of thing.
But what, the sort of the thing that happened in between those two things was, for a while there, I remember back doing a different show for Cartoon Network. I guess this is the second show I've directed for Cartoon Network. A show called Hero 108, which I feel like nobody watched. But when we were doing that show, I want to say it was like around 2005 or something like that. We were still doing storyboards on paper, but we were faxing back and forth storyboards.
Oh, wow. I couldn't imagine what that was like.
Oh, it was nuts, because again, you just have to wait and wait and wait, and yet at the time we were like, this is great, we're seeing the storyboards in only a week's worth of time instead of 2 months. So anyway, the point is, when you think, back in the 90s, when you thought of animation and you thought of, the international aspect of it and who does support, who the support studios were for animation, everything was in Korea. Now, as we got to the 2000s and mid 2000s and whatnot, the Philippines really rose to the occasion, and at some point that became the next place you would go to. So that was like, okay, now we're shipping to Korea, but the B team is shipping to the Philippines, and then eventually the Philippines got caught up, and you were your A teams were in both Korea and or the Philippines, depending on what your show or movie was like. Then as things started to continue, India started to step up, and you hear about studios, big studios like Disney, Warner Brothers, like shipping stuff. And when I say shipping, at this point, I mean, putting on their server to Indian studios to do support groups. So with the emergence of Garbage Boy and Trash Can, and I'm just going to ask people to Google it to find out where it's going to be showing, because
I'm not really sure yet either. I don't think they've kind of defined where it's going to be at. I really hope that American audiences get it on Cartoon Network or something like that. It'd be cool for it to make it this far.
I'm pretty sure they're gonna put episodes of it on their YouTube channel too, and I'm gonna be promoting the living crap out of this. So,
and I'll be doing the same thing. Yeah, we'll the animation conversation vehicle will be pushing it too.
Yeah, if you just, and I've said this a million times, I promote stuff like crazy. So if you just go to my Twitter page, and my Twitter page is @FountainCartoon on Twitter, I'll be promoting it endlessly. So if you're out to give it a gander, that's where you should go for now.
Yeah,
anyway,
for sure.
So what's significant now in terms of the industry is that Africa is now, this is one of the first shows I feel that I've seen where we found a studio that was kind of an up and coming studio. They're called Magic Carpet. And when I say up and coming, I mean by African standards, they're a very reputable, fantastic studio, but they had never done a cartoon for Cartoon Network meant for a global audience. And that's where I came in. That's kind of why I hired for this job.
So you came in to kind of like help bring them to an international like stage type of thing.
Now it was very well established at the get-go that we wanted, they wanted the cartoon to take place in Africa, and they wanted it to be Africa centric, but they wanted it to be done in such a way that people could enjoy it anywhere, just the same way American cartoons are,
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
You don't have to be an American to enjoy Dexter's Lab. So the reason I was brought in is because I had been, sort of acting as a consultant for these international co-productions for the past 15 years. And they needed someone to oversee it. And so my title is supervising director. And what that basically means is the creator of the show, Ridwan, he's the director of the show, but he's a really young guy.
Yeah.
And this is his very first cartoon. So my job was to mentor him.
Oh, awesome. That must be a wonderful experience, getting to share all your knowledge. I mean, that's one thing that I like. I relate it to parenting. That's one thing that I really enjoy is passing on knowledge down to people that, like my son being younger than me, and then watching him take that knowledge, compound on it, and then do it better than I did. That's the kind of stuff that I like to see. Yeah.
No, absolutely. And what was great about Ridwan, and by the way, we're going to have him on the show. That's a done deal.
Well, there you go. That's the exclusive.
Yeah. No, the thing about working with Ridwan is I've had occasions before where I was the right hand man for the creator of a show, and especially a lot of times when they're younger than I am, one of their first instincts is, well, what are you going to teach me, old man? It's a little it can be slightly combative because and by the way, I understand that it's their show. And one of the reasons a lot of them react that way is because if a network says to you, look, this guy's going to be your supervising director, even though you're the creator of the show, a lot of directors will swoop in and go, well, I know you're the creator, but here's my vision for the show.
Yeah.
It has never been my bag.
And I would have never have guessed if you would have told me that you did that kind of stuff, I would have never believed you. You just don't seem like the kind of guy that would come in and change somebody's vision just because, I don't know, I feel like people that would do something like that is just based in narcissism and arrogance. They're jaded in a sense that maybe they didn't get to create their own show and get to ride with their own show. But that's one thing that I appreciate about you is that you foster everything. You want people to succeed. You want people to be better than you. You don't take competition. It's not competition to you. I don't see you as somebody that is necessarily competitive in that sense. You want everybody to be able to work together and everybody to, it makes for better TV. It makes for better shows when everybody is cohesive and gets along. You can tell on certain shows right away when it gets, you could see just how a show starts to slide off the hill, and you could tell, okay, well, something happened here. Something had to have happened in the studio. Somebody had to have left. Something, you could just tell in shows sometimes when those kind of things happen.
Yeah, and you're 100% right, and thank you for all the compliments. If you guys ever want to hear about the aspects of my personality that are are intolerably awful. I'm happy to talk about those, but this isn't one of them. I like teaching people, and I like seeing people get excited about learning. That was one of the great things about Ridwan right out of the gate, was there was no ego. There was no, he was a big fan of my work, which was really nice. He was a huge fan of the Fairly Odd Parents. He was a massive fan of Gendy Tartakovsky and huge fan of Dexter's Lab. And in fact, we sort of, snuck in a quasi Dexter cameo in the show.
Okay.
I'm not gonna reveal it. You'll know.
I'm excited for that. Yeah, I'm excited to see that.
But he was right out of the gate. He was like, I can't wait to learn. I can't wait to learn. I can't wait to learn. And so that just right out of the gate made it this wonderfully symbiotic relationship. And it's kind of weird because I did discover throughout the course of my career that my next favorite thing to creating a show myself and running it myself is I like being the right-hand man of the creative force behind the show. Like, it's very satisfying. I was Butch's right hand on the Fairly Odd Parents. I was Bob Boyle's right hand on Yin Yang Yo. I was, one of Rob Renzetti's top board artists for that show and directors for that show. So I like being, right there at in
the fray. Yeah, in the fray, if you will.
Yeah. So the fact that right out of the gate, especially him being a younger guy, he didn't resent having an older person, kind of showing him the ropes. Not only did he not resent it, he was expressive gratitude, like right out of the gate. And so we hit it off in a big way, just right away. And so that was initially my job, was to go, okay, kiddo, here's what you should expect, and here's what's coming down the pike, and here's what are our priorities. And of course, first things were first, we had to write the show. And in addition to a couple of sort of veteran cartoon writers, he and I were also writers on the show together. And what's funny is, when the actual script came through, it was literally 10 times longer than it should have been. And we were forced to, make some really tough decisions about how to make this thing shorter.
Mm-hmm.
And it was he and I, as the creator of the show and the supervising director of the show, who were in a unique position to do that. And we wound up rewriting a lot of the show sort of as we were creating it.
Yeah.
It's funny because one of if you watch the show, one of the sort of big emotional arcs that occurs is an arc that we came up with when we were probably 2/3 of the way through production on the show. And we were able to retrofit it in pretty easily. But so anyway, so that's how it all began. And one of the great things about going back to Africa was we had the opportunity with, Cartoon Network at our backs. And by the way, it's Cartoon Network Europe that sponsored this. So
okay.
One of the interesting things about these international co-productions is that you're constantly juggling time zones.
Oh, yeah. I can imagine.
So whenever we would have, once a week, we would have a meeting with the network, and they were in France. The creator was in Nigeria. The producer was in South Africa. And then I, of course, at the time I was in New York. So we were dealing with all these different time zones, and that's just part and parcel, the craziness of doing these international co-productions.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. So anybody that wants to check out some of the other stuff that the Magic Carpet has created, you could go to magiccarpet.studio. That's their website. I am going to make it a point to go and watch a couple of these things myself when I get home. There's one called SIP, Super Dad, and Meet the Igwes, and then The Passport of Malam Ilya, I think is how you pronounce that. But yeah, so y'all give those a check out. So I guess let's see. How long has Garbage Boy and Trash Can been in production then? Since because all the articles say that they've just green lighted it here in June. What's the timeline on this, and how much longer do we have to wait? Or if you know, I'm pretty sure you might not know, but if you do know, how much longer do we have to wait till we actually get to see the first episode?
No, I think the first episodes are dropping mid-July. Now, I'm
Okay.
pretty sure that's when they're dropping in Africa.
Mhm.
I'm a little fuzzy on when they're going to be available to everybody, but I was led to believe that you're going to be able to watch them on the Cartoon Network Africa YouTube channel.
Well, the beauty of the internet is no matter where it drops, no matter what time it drops, and no matter what country it's in, we'll definitely get to watch it. So that's cool. Yeah. So what's the timeline on like the production then? So how long? Because you said you were in New York,
Well,
and all I've heard you talk
that's
about is North
yeah.
Carolina. So
Yeah, no, I was when this first came up, I was living in New York, and what's funny is, pardon me, what it had been a while since I had done anything for any of the major networks. Like I had been doing just lots and lots and lots of pilots for these international co-productions. And so I was very excited at the prospect of doing a Cartoon Network show. And I believe it was around either 2017, 2018 that they first approached me about it. And they were like, "Are you interested?" I'm like, "Absolutely. I love this. This sounds great." Um, and what wound up happening is, again, because you're dealing with Europe and Africa and the States and all this stuff, is there was just so much paperwork that they had to get through,
mhm.
that I think it was towards the end of 2018 that the deal was finally struck. And I finally, like, met Ridwan, and we had some creative powwows, and we had gone over scripts, and I think we had even started writing scripts and that sort of thing. And so that's when that all began. And then right around the time when we were really, truly 100% ready to start making the show, COVID hit.
Yeah, COVID. Yeah. You said that when you started saying pre-COVID, I was like, okay, so I'm gonna imagine COVID probably has some kind of factor into this somewhere.
Right.
As most
Now,
things in that time frame, it does. Yeah.
yeah. Now, by this time, I was frantic to get started. I was so excited to get started.
Yeah.
And so I was like, whoa. So, yeah, I know we're all freaking out because there's this global pandemic, but we're still making the cartoon, right? And
Yeah.
figuring, look, we're doing this virtually anyway. No one's going into the office, right? We can
Why
still
stop?
do
Yeah.
this,
Why would you
right?
stop when nothing really changes? Yeah.
Because the fact of the matter is, this was still a Cartoon Network show, which meant that we had to report practically every day to the network, and everything was closed down. There was no one, even if we had been making the cartoon, there was no one there that we could run it past.
Yeah.
And most of these bigger studios had not really like ever tried doing anything like this before. And like by the time 6 months had gone by in COVID, I feel like all the studios had sort of gone, okay, here's how we can operate this virtually and everyone can work from home. But for that first 6 months, no one was doing anything, and so the brakes were just slammed. And it wasn't, so that was about the latter part of I want to say 2018. And then we didn't actually get called back into action until I want to say the end of 2021, beginning of 2022.
Oh wow, that was a long hiatus.
No, it was I had given up on it, to tell you the
Yeah,
truth.
yeah.
Like
You already
can't
hung your hat on that one. Yeah.
Yeah, and every now and then the producer in South Africa would email me, and he's like, "I think we're getting really close. I think we're getting really close." And again, my whole thing was like, yeah, maybe, maybe not. I guess we'll see. But then it finally really did start happening. And once it really got the ball rolling, it was just gangbusters. And what was great was it was around that time that they were like, okay, now we got to find an animation studio. Now we got to find a storyboard artist. Now we got to find all these things. And it was great because for the first time in a really long time, a major network just let me run things the way I knew they should be run.
And I bet that was beautiful, especially after being a veteran in the industry. And you were at the industry in a time where these kind of things weren't happening. Like it wasn't fiscal. It didn't make fiscal sense to executives for whatever reason. And that's got to be a beautiful thing. Just to have a job that you're supposed to do, and you go do it without any kind of like, harassment or anything otherwise, because that's one of the things like that really bothers me at any job I've ever had is people micromanaging a job you taught me to do or a job I know how to do. It's like, you taught me how to do this job. Now,
Right.
why are you standing over my shoulder every 5 seconds saying, oh, we'll do this way or do this way, when I'm doing everything by whatever guidelines you have set for me? And I don't know. I think that's a beautiful thing that you get to just like stretch your legs and show what you're good at, because you're good at it. You're proven in the industry, obviously, that you wouldn't have spent 15 years working on international co-productions if you didn't have some kind of talent at what you do. So I think that's a great thing when people just leave people alone, creatives especially.
But
creatives
that's the thing.
especially.
That's the thing about doing pilots, though, and that's mostly what I was doing for these international co-productions. It was almost always pilots. And when you do a pilot, it's hard to point to and say, look what a great job we did, because you can't really point to it and say that unless it's already a successful series. And you can't do that with pilots. And generally, because of the non-disclosure agreements, it's not like you can put the pilots in front of people and go, you see this is this good because everyone left me alone. That you just never have the opportunity to do that. So
Yeah.
I was really grateful to Cartoon Network for letting me sort of put together a pipeline that I knew would work. And by the way, to their credit, the whole purpose behind Garbage Boy and Trash Can, in addition to, sort of dipping their toes in the African waters, is they wanted a return to form for the classic Cartoon Network style show.
Yeah.
Ridwan is an absolute freak for things like Dexter's Lab and what have you. He's a huge Dexter's Lab fan, and you can see it in the style of the show. And one of the things that I said to him out of the gate was, look, just like all those guys from the Two Stupid Dog days and from the Dexter's Lab days and from the Powerpuff days, in the first seasons of all those shows, they had very limited resources. And I said to him, I'm like, we're going to have very limited resources as well. This production is going to have everything working against it. But I guarantee you we can do a great job, but it's going to have everything working against it because we've got all these different time zones. Africa, in most of the countries that we were dealing with throughout, they have regular blackouts where they're just without power for hours and hours on end.
Oh, wow. That's got to be really hard to deal with.
Those are just the scheduled blackouts. There are lots of unscheduled blackouts, and there's all kinds of stuff that you have to contend with. Never mind the fact that you're also dealing with the fact that everyone's in different time zones. Like, I would have to get up for conference calls at like 2:00 in the morning, and and we would all have to do that. We would sort of pick whose turn it was to get on the conference call at 2 a.m. So there was everything working against us. The fact that none of us have been in the same room as one another. We had to find an animation studio, sight unseen. But what was great about that was I said to him, I'm like, we're not going to try and make this show anything that it isn't. We're going to be exactly like those guys were back in the day who had limited resources and did great stuff with it anyway. And so one of the initial sort of mandates that I put forward when we were finding storyboard artists and background artists and the animation studio was, I was like, we're never going to be able to afford the best studio in Africa. We're going to look for the second best studio in Africa or the third best. We're gonna look for the up and comers.
Yeah.
Those are the ones who are going to be the most enthusiastic. And
yeah, it's like college sports. It's like watching college sports compared to professional sports. They're not making the $20 or $30 million a year to do whatever they're doing. They're in there passionate about what they're doing. They're producing things that they are proud of and things that their heart is in and they're emotional about. And that's what you want. I feel like with limited resources, it's better to have the passion with the limited resources, because if you have enough passion, enough determination to make something happen with limited resources, then you're going to be great. Imagine, when they get to the point to where they are given resources, like let's say Gindi, for example, now that he has the world at his fingertips as far as resources go, he's able to create these like this show out that he's got out now is just, I don't know, it really has changed my like perspective on anime. It's like the next phase of what to expect, I feel like, for the next generation of animation. And it's I don't know, it's beautiful to see that in new people too. Like I'm really excited to see what Rowan continues to create. I hope that he gets to make more shows, you know, throughout his career, or be a part of great shows, because this Garbage Boy thing, I really think is I think it's going to be a really big show for kids, because again, you know, it's it's a superhero thing, but it's a superhero for kids. It's not like Superman,
again,
who's targeted to middle-aged men. You know, it's a kids show about a kid's superhero.
Well, and again, stylistically and in terms of the way we approached the humor and the story, you know, it's a return to form for Cartoon Network. People who've been kind of missing that old school Cartoon Network style are definitely going to want to tune in and give it a shot, because that's 100% what we were going for. And one of my biggest sort of things that I'm proud of with regard to this production is, you know, apart from Ridwan, if there's another person who also stood out as a real superstar in this thing, it's my board artist, Miles Malumbo, who, again, he was not very experienced in storyboarding, like, at all. In fact, this may have been, I know he went to school for it and I know he studied it, but I think this was his first bit of real world experience. And there was a turning point where I had the option of either going with Miles or going with someone who had a ton more experience, but I could just sense that they were going to be a prima donna, and that they were going to be, they weren't going to be open to, you know, sort of following my lead and letting me teach them. Whereas Miles was just, could not wait to get started, could not wait to learn.
That's what you want, though, is you want the less experienced, hungry guy, because you could mold him, you could shape him, you could really like protege those kind of people a lot better than you could somebody who's, you know, it's like telling somebody who's been doing something for 10 years, well, you know, you could do it this way. The way you're doing it isn't wrong, but there's better ways to do it, and they don't want to hear that. You know, somebody's been doing it for a long time doesn't really like hearing a lot of criticisms, and that's where you get your prima donnas. I'm not that way. I like to try to approach life as there's always something to learn, even if I'm a professional at it, even if I put my 10,000 hours into it, there's always something, because everything evolves and changes. Like animation, you've had to learn constantly throughout your career to change with the times, you know, to adapt with new technologies, adapt with new methods and things like that of doing things. And I feel like those are the people that survive. You know, the people that are willing to adapt to new things in their environments, not, you know, in a grand sense, not just specific to animation, just in life in general. If you always approach every situation that you're in as an opportunity to learn something, then I feel like even the shittiest of experiences can end up being good experiences, because you take something from everything, whether it's bad or good. You know, so
absolutely, and make no mistake, you know, no production. No cartoon gets made without having production woes, and without having, you know, fires break out that need to be put out, and you know, massive major problems that occur. And it was those were the moments where I had to, you know, sit Ridwan down and go, look, buddy, this is your show. This is your time to, you need to step up to the crew, and you need to be like, hey, everybody, we're going to get through this. This is okay. We got this covered. And you know, that was really rewarding. And again, this is a show that had everything working against it, and you know, now it's finally coming out, and I'm really excited. And it's funny because it was during the making of this show when we really kind of got into a state of, you know, we were kind of running on autopilot. We were doing really well. Everyone knew what they had to do. Everyone was kind of in good communication with one another, and we were running like a well-oiled machine. And it was during this whole time that I was sort of looking at this going, wow, you know, look what we are accomplishing with a studio that none of us have ever set foot in, people scattered all over the world, and a lot of them unproven talents. You know, look at this great thing we're making, and we're all doing it virtually. And so it was during the making of this show that I first got the thought to myself. It's like, gee, I wonder if I could set up a virtual animation studio just using
Oh, so this
Twitter.
is the seed then. So this is the seed
Oh,
for
absolutely.
the
Yeah.
realizing
And-
how
and-
easy it was. Well, not easy, but realizing how doable, because everything's got a challenge. But realizing how doable this digital world is for this kind of thing. You could create your own virtual whatever. There's there's people I know that never met. There's like 3 guys that I know that do music together. They've never met each other, but they produce a band's worth like music together as a band, never even been in the same room with each other. So like it's such a crazy world that we live in where we could do these kind of things and we could reach people and we could be communities in ways that forums never let us be. You know, this is so much different than like the online forums of the 90s. And it's like you could have your phone and you could be in a room with 20 people on your phone talking to 20 different people at one time. It's insane what that allows for creators to do. It allows creators to put themselves in people's living rooms. You know, like it's like Twitch and all the streaming stuff that goes on now and all the content creation just in general. It's our world now. As far as creators, it's our world now, you know?
Well, and that raises a major point, because it was when we finally, you know, finished post-production on this, that even though I'd been sort of ruminating, it's like, gee, I wonder what it would be like to start a virtual studio. You know, by the time we were done with this, I was so happy with the results. I was like, geez, if I can do this for a major network, imagine what I could do if I didn't have to answer to anybody. And by the way, Cartoon Network was great. There's not they were great to work with.
Yeah, but it's still different though. I mean, you still got to answer to somebody. There's still a chain of command. There's still a budget with executives and
And that's what made me, and that's why now Fountain's Pen Production exists, and that's why we've got a team now of 120 people all making original cartoons. And so this is, you know, Garbage Boy and Trash Can is significant in so many ways.
Wow, 120 you said? That's like doubled since the last number you gave me.
I know.
Wow, that is awesome.
And what's funny is I'm hoping that people look at Garbage Boy and Trash Can and go, wow, look what they did in Africa. Maybe we should think of taking our program to Africa, or maybe we should think about how we structure our pipeline, because, you know, we had a pipeline that ran smoother than any production I've ever been on. And it was because they let us do it the way we knew we needed to do it. And like I said, we managed to do it even with everything working against us. So, you know, this was sort of step 1 for my little bid to help change the industry a little bit. And now step 2 is Fountain's Pen Productions, where we're going to show the world, you know, hey, look, when you really like sort of let us cut loose, look what we can do. And
I really think it's going to, for everybody here, we get to be on the ground floor. So like, get in while you can, because you might get to, and I don't even say might. I have like all the faith in the world about it. You're going to be a part of something that is revolutionary for the animation industry. This will be a creator showing executives that pencils and paperwork and stuff is all good and grand, but without these guys here, without the creators, and that goes to like the strikes and stuff that are happening now and stuff, like without these creators, computers are never going to make what these guys make. You can never put a prompt into an AI generator and hit enter and create anything as beautiful as what these creators create. And I think this is a great example of it. This Garbage Boy and Trash Can, it's a great example of creators just showing what they can do when there's you know, no thumb just pushing down on them to affect that. And I can't wait to actually see full episodes of it, because I know it's going to be great. I know because anything that you've done that I've watched is great, but not only that, like aside from you, I know it's going to be great because it's people who love what they're doing. And anytime somebody loves what they're doing, it's gonna be a beautiful product and a beautiful show or something like that to watch. And so I guess
well, you know, I've said it a million times. You know, you can have a show set in Africa, you can have a show set on the moon, you can have a show starring, you know, Pickle, you can have a show starring, you know, somebody in any part of the world. Good is good. You know, and
absolutely,
as you mentioned earlier, you can tell when you're watching a show where people had fun making it. And my biggest hope is that people will walk away from Garbage Boy and Trash Can not only entertained, but they'll say to themselves, "I bet they had fun making."
I'll take it back to Two Stupid Dogs. I'll take it back to Two Stupid Dogs on like a show that you could tell people were having fun making. That is that is a perfect example of three college buddies making a show together, kind of thing, on their first dive into the real world. And it was just it's just a beautiful thing when
I
creators
can't
get
wait for us
create.
to have Ridwan on the show, because when you're finally done with post production on a show, you can kind of laugh at the pain.
Yeah.
It's you can kind of look back at the hard times at getting the show done, and just kind of look at all of the stress and strain. You can just kind of laugh at it. So it's going to be really good to have him on. And at Fountain Cartoon. And I'll be giving you updates on when you'll be able to watch this, because I think you're really going to enjoy it.
Okay, there you go. At Fountain Cartoon. That's where you can find anything to do with F and F related, and animation conversation related too. He promotes the crap out of the show, and I can't thank him enough for being a part of this. So I guess now that we've got the beans on toast, the last bite would be everybody just keep tuned. We appreciate all the love and support. We're almost at 200 subscribers. I might talk F into doing maybe a giveaway of a drawing or something for the 200 subscribers. Maybe put y'all in a hat and pull a name or something. We'll maybe work on figuring something like that out. We do appreciate everybody's continued support, and you can find us at Animation Convo everywhere. And we just, I don't know, this has been such a surreal experience for me, and I appreciate your continued contributions.
I just had this idea in real time, and so I'm gonna completely
get it out.
If you send in fan art to Animation Conversation, if you send a drawing of me and Rusty, best drawing gets a free drawing from me of any character you want.
There you go. I'll add that in the description too on this YouTube video. Also, I don't know. It's just it's been a great experience. No, you didn't derail me. You didn't derail me at all. It's just been, I don't know. It's just still surreal for me every time that I get to talk to you about all these cartoons and stuff. It's just crazy, because it's like this show is going to be watched potentially by hundreds of thousands of kids potentially, and I get to be a part of the behind the scenes part of that. And for me, being a huge fan of animation, it's hard to not feel emotional about it. It's just, so for me, it's just such an insane experience.
That's what I think is great about not just this show, but about what we're doing on the at Animation Convo Twitter page, and my following, your following, Fountain's Pen Productions. Like we're starting this whole like little family of people, and they're all kind of like-minded folks. And so we're not only making content for you, content like this, content that you can interact with, but we're also making cartoons for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's a great time to be a fan of cartoons, because, and by the way, everybody, if you're listening to this, when the next show comes up, tune in on YouTube when the show premieres, because Rusty and I are often there in the live chat.
Oh yeah, always. I try to spend at least the first 20. I'm not there the whole time, but I'll pop in and out throughout the whole thing. I have another idea. How do you feel about this one? So if you have a piece of animation that you've created, or a piece of art that you've drawn or something like that, if you submit them, we'll try, I'll talk to the editors to see if they don't mind, because it is a little extra work for them. But at the end of every episode, on the outro, we'll show your little animation clip, or we'll show your
even just a drawing.
art.
I think that's a great idea.
Art, animation, whatever it is, doesn't matter. If your 5-year-old creates animation on the tablet and you want to share that 5-year-old's animation, please send that to us. Anything like that, and give us how it's to be credited, because I want to make sure that all proper credits given to whoever creates what. And please submit your own art. I will use the internet, and I will find out if you're submitting somebody else's art. Please use your own art if at all possible.
And that also that brings up something else. I mean, one of the things that we've and I know we've gotten completely off topic, and now we're just rambling, but that's fine.
It's okay. It's the end of the episode.
One of the things that we said right out of the outset about this show is, we're having creators on, we're having writers on, we're having artists on, we're having voice talent on. And by the way, we've got some A-listers on the way.
Heavy hitters.
But I also we're having on one of our guests coming up is an animation professor, someone who teaches animation, and I want to have just fans on the show. I want it to
absolutely.
be a mix of everybody, which
Because as much
that's how we have the animation conversation.
yeah, because as much as this show belongs to me and you, it belongs to them even more. It belongs to the people that are watching it even more, because you guys will be directing and controlling the flow of what we do. Whatever you want to hear us talk about, or that's what the goal is here. So now that the beans are on the toast and we've spilled them off the toast, the final bite here will be thank everybody for the continued support. I'm going to try to maybe work on maybe a merch store, maybe with some hats that have animation conversation on them or something like that soon. That's just something I've been mulling over. Maybe a nice a derby like that with a fedora, with an animation conversation on it, logo on it or something for F to wear. But yeah, so be on the lookout for developments, because as we grow the show, we're going to try to give you more content and things like that as we develop through this. Maybe on our birthday we might watch Iron Giant in Discord with people. I think that would be cool, because me and F are we share a birthday coming up soon.
You know what? I'm gonna wrap my own end up by saying, everybody, it's a great time to love cartoons. So zigga zigga ah, party people.
And there you go. You heard it from F. And this has been the Animation Conversation.
And that brings us to the end of another incredible episode of Animation Conversation. We hope you enjoyed this animated adventure as much as we did. Remember, if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions for future episodes, we would love to hear from you. Feel free to reach out to us on our social media channels or through good old-fashioned email. We value your input and want to make Animation Conversation a podcast that resonates with animation lovers like you. Our Instagram and Twitter are @AnimationConvo. Our YouTube is @AnimationConversation. Our email is theanimationconvo@gmail.com. Before we say our final goodbyes, we want to remind you to stay animated. Keep exploring, appreciating, and sharing the magic of animation with others. Let your imagination soar, and let the world of animated wonders continue to inspire and captivate you. Thank you once again for joining us on this incredible journey. Until next time, this is Wubcake, signing off for Animation Conversation. Keep watching, keep dreaming, and keep the animation conversation alive.
This has been a Rogue Media Network production.